The Last of Us. It's one of those franchises that every publisher wishes to create, having a heart-gripping narrative, lovable characters, and an addicting gameplay loop. These are all aspects that don't matter to a publisher. No, what's really important is how many times can they endlessly re-release the same game and still have their customers buy it, even though PS5s are still too overpriced, yet difficult to find. And your best solution to acquire one at this point is at gunpoint. Just like these two games, Naughty Dog can slightly refurbish the same product and their consumers will purchase it in droves, leading to another re-release down the line, creating an unnecessary remake for a game that was already an unnecessary sequel. Naughty Dog entering the realm of studios who mainly re-release the same product with updated visuals. This is unrelated, but here's definitely a new video I just created and not a deleted artifact from this channel that I thought was so cringy it should never see the light of day. Hey y'all, Hamlad here. I'm back at it again, making more great content like these videos over here. As we all know, The Last of Us Part 2 is this broken, stupid, unfun game. Even though I haven't beaten it or played it, hell, I haven't even read any of the spoilers. I've just been riled up by the community outrage over the out of context leaks. And really, when has the mob ever been wrong about anything? In the 10-year gap between the release of The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, Naughty Dog has released countless spin-off games to tide their fans over. While none of these ever reached the lofty standard the original had set, they were decent enough distractions to kill some time until that next mainline franchise dopamine rush. So, the million-dollar question now is this game any great? Upon release, back in the good old days of 2020, to a lot of people, this game felt too woke. But if you criticized it, you were being an incel. In other words, I don't understand the other side, therefore it scares me. This game isn't woke, and its fan base isn't filled with sexist. You know, those terms that meant something in 2016, but have been so overused, they've lost all meaning. The only solution to this ever-growing problem is to start finding anyone who uses these words unironically more than like twice a year. I've said it before, and I'll say it right now, but I can enjoy any piece of media that has a message that goes against my own beliefs so long as it's entertaining. That's all The Last of Us Part 2 had to be, but does it succeed at being that? The game starts with this obvious death fake-out, where we're meant to fear for Joel's life as if he's in actual danger. I know Joel looks like he's in danger here, guys, but I've seen the trailers and he's in a bunch of different scenes. Also, just pacing-wise, if he did die here, that would be pretty anticlimactic, as there wasn't any build-up, and the setup of this whole scene was super contrived, and he just willingly trusts these random kids he just met in the woods. Naughty Dog, realizing how funny it would be to bait the players with this poorly thought-out scene, decides to just do it anyways. This is actually genius subversion writing because Joel represents the player, selfish individuals who spent a long time waiting for the sequel, just as Joel waited for Ellie. And Abby is a physical manifestation of Naughty Dog's wrath. Wrath that they feel forced to make a sequel to a game that didn't need one. Because Joel decided to die, Ellie and Dina go on a whirlwind big city adventure, where they narrowly survive blistering winds, scorching deserts, but actually, they just arrive at their destination in the next cutscene. Okay, I can easily explain this. When Ellie and Dina got baked together and then started having sex, they must have entered their LGBTQ state, getting so hot and high, their love transcended space and time, and only now, when reaching Seattle, the side effects wore off. A girl this busy to get her revenge has no time to slow travel. Naughty Dog here is subtly, yet geniusly, telling the players that the destination matters more than the journey. Searching for Abby in Seattle for 3 days straight has left Ellie bruised and beaten. As she's ready to call it quits and about to teleport back home with her homies. Then, out from the shadows, Abby appears, readying herself for the game's epic climax to test all of Ellie's resolve and resolution. Instead of that, thankfully, the game starts you back from day one, allowing the pacing of the game to cannibalize itself and playing through all the great action set pieces as Abby for the next 10 hours. The genius of this section hit me like a golf club to the temple. Like Neil humbly stated, they don't care about making fun games. This moment was the heart of what they aim to do. This game truly makes you feel like you're depressed. Let me guess, you thought this was some baby game with a linear and easy to follow story. This game is art, meaning here's 6 different plotlines that don't add much to being out of order, so good luck piecing it together, fuckos. I think Naughty Dog was expecting people to play as Abby and be like, yes, I am 14 and this society truly is the last of us. When really, it had us go like, out of my way, I just want to play as Ellie again. This did force the audience to calm down a little and think maybe, just like Ellie and Abby, we're all a bunch of entitled, privileged brats. So the game brilliantly decides to ignore all sense of pacing by restarting the narrative and trying to make you care about Abby and all her one-note NPC sidekicks. Even though these guys essentially have a Nickelback timer floating above their heads, and with less than 72 hours before their clocks hit 0. It's so late for me to give a shit about them, but you gotta respect Naughty Dog for their continuous attempts. Between the game's 3 different places it could possibly end, here was its best option, where Abby chooses forgiveness, ends the cycle of revenge, and walks off in the LA sunset, about to be reunited with her people, and Ellie is stuck on the wrench, unable to heal from her PTSD. What a great way to show that revenge is bad than by showing Naughty Dog's clearly bigoted fan base that revenge will turn you gay and have you raising someone else's kid on a farm. In all seriousness though, I do not envy the kind of questions this kid will have to ask one day. But no, the game refuses to end, just like the player. No matter how much you would like your own suffering, that is your life, to stop, it will continue to go on. Abby is actually in a place where the apocalypse hasn't reached and is attacked by 2 regular Californians. Then Ellie has a badly timed change of heart and instant transmissions to Abby's location to save her. Okay, I can explain this one too. When Ellie was living in the commune, as a communist, they sacrificed all earthly goods and learned the ability to untether their spirits and reappear somewhere else. Just so we're clear on this, Ellie has now teleported from Wyoming to Washington, back to Wyoming to LA, and then back to Wyoming in about a week. This is Naughty Dog's way of telling, not showing us, how far she's come. You know the phrase, killing with kindness? Well, instead, Ellie saves them with carnage. We can't even be mad at Naughty Dog for how this game ends. Because, like I explained earlier, Naughty Dog has set the stage that the destination is more important than the journey. As the final story stinger hits you, it becomes abundantly clear that the narrative is clearly a mess because it reflects Ellie's own mess of a life. That's what's truly great about this story, that because of all the plot inconsistencies and bizarre plot twists, Naughty Dog is putting the power in our hands, for us to interpret it how we want to. If you did not like this story, it's mostly because you chose for yourself that the story was poorly executed. I'm about to spit some straight heresy, but hear me out. The concept of the original Last of Us was pretty basic. It had the stereotypical apocalyptic world overrun by zombies, and one of the main characters is, get this, immune. Honestly, what made that game so revered, out of all the things it did right, was its presentation. A majority of games, even today, have nonsensical narratives, with PS2 levels of script writing. The original was so well written that it got to the point that you wouldn't cringe when the characters decided to talk. Serious character acting through mocap was implemented, and most importantly, it had focus. The player only had a glimpse of what this world had become through a narrow selection of eyes. You played as one character until they were no longer viable, and then on to the next. The progression felt natural, and it made sense in-game when you would control someone new. If the progression of events in The Last of Us Part 1 looks like this, Last of Us Part 2 looks like this. Focus has been traded in for cramming in as much information as possible. The narrative will move forward and backwards and sideways, robbing it of all momentum and tension. The biggest offender of this is the out-of-control pacing. What should be the climax of this story instead becomes the moment the narrative blueballs you, and introduces what is essentially a 10-hour flashback, which feels like it has little to nothing to do with the game you are playing. Instead of trying to achieve one goal super well, it attempts to do 100 different things mediocrely. This is the gamer version of the anime trying to catch up to the manga. The downside of having such a story-heavy game is that if your story is just a bunch of contrived set pieces poorly duct taped together, the game aspect gets completely overshadowed. Which is a shame, because the level design is crawling with nooks to squeeze through, holes to crawl under, and spades of verticality to get to higher ground. The areas are bigger and freer to explore. While you can't avoid some fights, the game rewards you with lore and gear if you go off and explore. When the game isn't being disgusting, the game is being disgustingly beautiful. Just the attention to detail oozes life and creativity. There's a miniature story being told in every location you step foot in, showing you what happened during and after the outbreak. Oh, I get it. It's cause the cult members are game freaks. Unfortunately, by having this game look so realistic and take itself extremely seriously, when something goofy does happen, its immersion immediately breaks on itself. Like when Joel's brother uses his superhuman-like reflexes and dodges a bullet shot at his head by a mere millimeter. Or the accidental funniest moment in the game, when this extremely pregnant lady climbs onto a truck and no one stops her. Naughty Dog? No. Bad boy. This trope of a badass pregnant lady needs to die before it gets started. I will not take characters like these seriously. This feels like a gag character that someone forgot to erase from their first draft. No, not the pregnant lady. Why didn't anyone tell her it was dangerous out in the apocalypse? The single player was such a joy to play, it's getting me really hyped up for the multiplayer. The faction mode was delayed, but I'm sure Naughty Dog is cooking up something definitely worth the wait with this one. I love it when media sells me one thing, and then the product tells me another thing completely. It's unfortunate because these chapters in isolation are intense, fun, and a good showcase of what these survivors' lives have become. It feels great to play, and it's disgusting to look at. If this was some episodic Telltale game or TV show, the stop-and-start nature of the story could be an interesting watch. However, it's neither of those. It's a 20+ hour game that's haphazardly stitched together. I need you guys to know that if you didn't like my review, just like how Neil wrote the script to be purposely polarizing, I made this video intentionally bad, meaning your criticism isn't valid. While it's no masterpiece, the game is not glitchy or buggy in the slightest. I'd give this game a 7 out of 10, 1 point for each year it was in development. Next time, Naughty Dog, don't rush your game out.